Hey everyone, my name is Jimmy and welcome to That's What I Call Soccer. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the rules behind the 2023 MLS Fantasy game. I'll provide some context behind the rules and give you some tips and tricks on how you might be able to manipulate the rules in order to get the highest score week in and week out. I think this video will be pretty helpful for people that are playing MLS Fantasy for the first time, as it does differ from other fantasy games such as FPL a little bit. So I hope watching this video will help you out and make you feel well equipped for game week 1. So once you go through the registration and sign-in process, you'll pick a team name and then you'll start looking at selecting your team. Each team is going to consist of 15 players. 11 of those will start each game week. When selecting your team, you must stay within the initial $100 million budget that the game gives you, but you will have the opportunity to raise that budget throughout the game. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. Your team must consist of 2 goalkeepers, 5 defenders, 5 midfielders, and 3 forwards every week. And at max, you can have 3 players from one MLS team on your roster at a time. That means you're not able to just pick all the players from the best team in the league or your favorite MLS team. You've got to pick a variety of players from different teams throughout the league. So once you've selected all 15 players from your squad, you'll have a variety of formations to choose from in order to get the best 11 players onto the pitch. I figured it was easier for me to put all the formations on the screen here for you to look at instead of me listing them all out one by one. So go ahead and check them out. I think it's important to note that at once you have to start 3 defenders, 3 midfielders, and at least 1 forward. So you can see that here in these formations, all of them minimally have 3 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 1 forward in them. Team substitutions, this one's important. You are able to substitute players until that individual player's match has begun. But once that player's match has begun, no changes can be made to that player. What that means essentially is if you've got someone on your team that you're not sure if they're going to start or not, you can check the lineups up until the start of the game time, and as long as you've made the switch to the appropriate player that's starting before the match starts, you can make as many substitutions as you want. You can substitute players for the same position, or you can adjust your formation to one of the formations that we just talked about a second ago. As long as you're keeping a minimum of 3 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 1 forward on the field at all times. Alright, so transfers. This is where MLS Fantasy gets a little bit different from other fantasy games. Without exceeding your team's budget, you're able to make unlimited transfers throughout the entire season. You are able to make transfers once the lockout for the week is lifted, and you can keep making them up until that individual player's team has kicked off their match. And again, all transfers must stay within your salary cap. So what exactly does that mean, and how does that differ from other games like FPL? Well, in FPL, what you'll do is you'll pick a team and you'll have a lockout time. Once that lockout time hits, you're stuck with the players that you have. You can make no more transfers. You only get a specific number of transfers per week, and if you exceed that number of transfers, you have to take a hit. In MLS Fantasy, you can make as many transfers as you want. And again, you can make them up until that player's game has started. You'll be able to put players in your squad and look at the rosters before the game actually starts. And if that player's not starting, or if they are starting, then you can make switches up until the game starts and get those players in your team. And it doesn't have to be from the same team. It can be from an entirely different team as long as that team's game hasn't started either. So with those rules in mind, there's some tactics used by advanced fantasy players, and the 3 tactics that are commonly used are the keeperoo, the autoroo, and the switcheroo. We'll make a separate video for those and go into each of those in depth, and I'll share my screen and physically show you how you guys can set up your team and use those to maximize your points week in and week out. These tactics will allow you to view players' points without actually having them in your starting 11, and then have you make the decision if you want to keep those players' score or substitute and transfer in another player and try to get a higher score from their game. And if you use those tactics, you'll have a much higher chance of having a higher score and beating out your friends in your mini leagues or in your local MLS team league, and improving your overall rank as well. All right, so next we've got captaincy. Each week you'll designate 1 player from your starting 11 as your captain, and they'll earn double points throughout the game week. If for whatever reason your captain doesn't play, then you forego the ability to earn double points for that game week. Your captain must be selected before that individual team's game kicks off, and it can't be changed once the match begins. All right, so reserve players and automatic substitutions. This is where we were kind of talking about earlier with the auto-roos, switcheroos, and keeperoos. This is kind of getting more into that a little bit. The 4 players on your bench act as automatic emergency substitutions for any players that don't play in your starting 11. So what that means is if you've got a player on your starting 11 that for whatever reason doesn't play, the game will automatically substitute in the player with the highest total points from your bench. If a player from your lineup takes the field and scores a 0, there will be no automatic substitutions from your bench, even if the player is hurt early in the game. Team and player value. Player prices change between game weeks depending on the player's performance. As the prices change for players on your team's value will change by the same amount. What that's saying is your team value is not only dependent on how well the players in your starting 11 do, but how well the players on your bench do as well. If you're looking to grow your team value right off the bat, you'll want to put players on your bench that you think are going to play, even if that means sacrificing some budget on your starting 11. But if you're looking to maximize the total amount of points throughout the first couple of weeks and sacrificing some budget along the way, then you'll just want to put $4 million players on your bench so you can use the most amount of budget possible on your starting 11. I don't think there's a right or wrong way, and I think both ways have their pros and cons. Some people really see the benefit of having a high team value early on so you can maximize your bench and using those autoroos and keeperoos and switcheroos that we were talking about. And some people really prioritizing having the best players on the pitch possible at once and getting the most maximum points, but sometimes that means not having a strong bench and not gaining value from players on your bench playing. And lastly, we'll just go over points for the game. Players will earn points after each match based on their performance in an official scoring system. I'll put a quick screenshot of that scoring system here for you, and if you guys want to check it out more in depth, I'll put a link to it below in the description. But it's not just goals and assists that matter towards your players' total points. There's bonus points to be had as well from key passes, clearances, to shot blocks, from saves, all sorts of different things. So you'll want to take a look at that and consider that when you're picking players as well. Sometimes players from teams that aren't as good get a lot of bonus points because they're taking a lot of shots. Their goalies have to make a lot of saves. Their defense is continuously working to get the ball out of their zone and make clearances. So sometimes it's not just the best players from the best teams that get the most points. Sometimes you've got to go for those players that will get you some bonus points if you're not hitting an attacking return or a clean sheet if they're a defender as well. The last thing to talk about is double game weeks, and a lot of people really love double game weeks because it gives you the opportunity to get a really high score. What double game weeks are is when certain teams have 2 fixtures in one game week, and players that play in a double game week will have the points collected from both matches throughout the game week. Like I said before, double game weeks are really exciting to a lot of players to have the opportunity to score a lot of points, but I think a lot of people can get sucked into traps as well. And I think this channel will help people from getting stuck in those traps and gain the edge that they need to improve their rank. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you found some use out of this video. We're just a few days away from the kickoff of the new season. I'm really excited. I'll have a video coming out soon on how to do autoroos, keeperoos, and switcheroos more in depth. And later in the week, I'll have a video previewing game week 1, where I'll go over potential matchups to target, picks for your squad, and my team reveal leading up to game week 1. Thanks again, and catch you all next time.